Here's another general module repair. Open this up. Put the plastic aside. First trick, turn our soldering iron on. It only takes a minute. First trick, cut the capacitors right out. Little ones come right out. The big one usually has some conformal coating, so sometimes you have to just pick it off. Capacitors are out. Soldering iron's up to temperature. The beauty of one of the Weller soldering irons is that it heats up very, very quick. So first thing we'll do here, we're going to put a whole bunch of fresh solder on these leads. To give it a couple seconds to soak down, and you'll see the bubble of solder drop right through the board. If you can sometimes use your. Sometimes it'll come right up with your soldering iron. So this lead is loose. But you can also use gravity in your favor. So if you hold it here, just touch your iron to the bottom of it. A lot of times that lead will just stick right to your soldering iron, and it's in your hand. This is a solder sucker, spring loaded. Drop it on the pin, push a button, it sucks it right out. Sucks out the solder. Sometimes you get lucky and it sucks out the lead too. Two of my holes are clean. Again, we're going to give all these fresh solder. So once they're hot, I just give them a little bit of a tap, and then that kind of helps them fall to the, to the other side of the board. More fresh solder. Occasionally you get a solder accumulation on your board, so it helps to just well, I got most of them with that little trick. So if you saw what I did there, is I'm just pulling up on the board just a little bit, just let gravity do the trick. Usually gets it, but there's a couple of leads that are still hanging here. One down, two down, three down. Alright, so all my capacitors are out, all my leads are out. I just gotta clean the holes. So we'll put our solder sucker here, heat it up, give it a push, and the hole's clean. sometimes it helps a little bit when you give it a little bit more fresh solder. Again, the leads are out, but you know, fresh solder always helps. Notice the one thing I didn't do is I didn't force anything. I didn't pull anything out. I didn't pry anything. I didn't use any other tools to scrape up the board. All I'm doing is, you know, using heat and fresh solder. 2 holes are clean. Most of these clean. There's a couple that are a little bit stubborn here. Some of these really big ground traces, they need a lot of heat and more fresh solder. And that's about it. 2 more over here. The only other thing you gotta watch out for here is sometimes the solder sucker, when you spit out the stuff that it pulls up, sometimes it leaves a little bit of, you know, solder debris. You do not want that in your, you know, hanging out on some of your resistor leads and stuff. So it looks like we have all my holes are clean. And consult the cheat sheet here. It's actually this way. So I'll start by loading the 470 performance leads. Drop it in the board, as close to the board as you can get it. Give the leads a little bit of a kink backwards. And then move down the line. 100 microfarad. Again, the stripe goes negatives towards the connectors. Helps to form the capacitors. These are a little bit larger than the original ones because they're higher voltage, but it helps if you give them a little bend first. The other thing that helps is putting the actual polarity and the values on top so you can take a quick glance at it and make sure you've got the right ones. A little bit of solder glob here. And your 47 ohm. This is the only one that I didn't have the same 47 mic in this series, so I got one that looks a little bit different than the other, but electrically it's the same. Slightly different temperature coefficient, but not a big deal. Again, we'll bend that lead. Next one is a 1 microfarad. Form the leads. Double check the polarity before I put it in. And last but not least, we have the 10 microfarad. hose isn't perfectly clean, but it's a... So all our capacitors are in. Double check all the polarities, pointing, all the negatives are pointing towards the connectors on the board. Bend all of our leads. It's also helpful when after you bend the leads to give them a quick snip. Then you're not trying to heat up a big massive ground plane and a big long lead. So cut the leads first. Then it's a lot easier to solder them. And we'll wrap it up with some final solder. Again, wait for the bubble to drop down after it heats up for about 5 seconds or so. Usually this excess solder sinks right through to the bottom of the board, giving you a nice confirmation that you've got well flowed solder and not a cold solder joint. Nine and 10. Alright. So I'll take a quick inspection here. My camera doesn't really do us any justice, but I have a little magnifying glass that I look under just to double check things, make sure I don't have any solder bridges. All the solder joints look clean. One of them is just a tad too long, so we'll trim it a little bit. And that, my friends, is how to do a general module. Of course, you got to reassemble it too. And some of these have a notch in the bottom that the board snaps into, so it does help to get that lined up. Keep it from shifting. The only other thing that I recommend is that you take your marker, metallic Sharpie works great, and just write new caps. And initials. That's it.